A lot of folks, when they first come across furry, they think it's like, oh my god, it has to be a sex thing. That's the only thing it could possibly be, right?
Maybe all they think about is sex, so I don't know what it said about them.
Honestly, I think that that's what a lot of folks tend to do when they see furry. They're just like, oh my god, that answers everything, that explains everything, it can't be anything else. It's just harder for people to look past it and say, hey, oh wait, it can be community, it can be any number of other things, so that's good. But I mean, I also want to point out, for some people it can be sex. And I think it's okay to say that. You know, like, we are in 2025. I think that the thing that keeps everyone together and everyone around is actually community. And community is the beginning and the end. We find each other in these spaces and make these spaces special for each other. Everybody experiences all different aspects of the fandom. Some people find, you know, like a nice place in it. Vloog, it was great having you here. Yeah, like some people find like that lewd space is actually like their space, and that's okay. Other people find that, you know, like it's just like, oh, well, I'm actually more here for the wholesome side of it, and that's reasonable too. Like, you can have a mixture of both. You can have one or the other. More often than not, it's a mixture of both, right? Ember says, in VTuber culture, there's lewd and safe for work VTubers. And for the furry fandom, there's a similar thing where some people are into it for the safe for work stuff and others are more into it for kinky stuff or a mix. One side does not define the whole because it's such a broad culture. Well, you're absolutely correct. I think the way I've always defined it to folks when they ask me what is furry, I say that furry is an individualistic experience. It's a community that really relies on whatever you choose to make of it. It doesn't have to be a specific thing. It doesn't have to be like a solid and serious definition. It can be, you know, like, hey, I just really like anthropomorphic animals, to like, I have, you know, like lots of artwork of these things, or, you know, like maybe it's a significant aspect of my expression, you know, like on that kind of less safe for work side. All of those things are reasonable. Ember says, historically though, kink and queerness is pretty integrated to furry, or integral to furry. And I think in some ways it's a very good thing. I think so too. I think that kink and queerness are intrinsically linked. They are two things that you can't really separate. They are a part of the community. It's actually one of the, so I made a video on my channel not that long ago called Keep Furry Weird. And it was discussing how kink is actually the shield that protects us from, you know, like the quote unquote, you know, like mainstream capitalist world. It sort of protects the community, right? So like, it's the weirdos, the quote unquote weirdos, right? Like the people who are like, I'm really into inflation, or I really, you know, like pup hoods, or, you know, like maybe I'm like people who are like, oh, you know, like they're baby furs, right? Like people like that are actually the reason why our space is the way it is. Chasing people out of our space is actually the danger. We shouldn't be pushing those people out. We should actually be celebrating all these people. You know, it's why you see kink at Pride as a very integral part of Pride, right? It's super important to Pride. Arcade Guy says they saw a pool toy furry IRL for the first time this weekend and was flabbergasted yet pleasantly surprised. Hey, listen, so like when I made that documentary covering like the inflatable pool toy furries, it was an episode on Beyond the Fandom. I think one of the things that blew my mind was that, one, that community is huge. Two, that community is just as rich and diverse as the furry fandom proper. You know, it's not that different. So maybe it's vinyl or latex instead of, you know, like fur. At the end of the day, it's still a community. At the end of the day, you still make friends. You find like-minded individuals. You get to hang out in these really cool and beautiful spaces. You get to see people and experience things you never would have been able to otherwise. That, to me, is amazing. It's special. It deserves to be protected. Ember says furry is a very unique subculture. It hasn't really been, you know, taken over by corporate interests or dude bro investors like a lot of other fandoms. And I think that has to do with how it has been created, right? Furry is a community founded on the principles of, one, being a fan of each other, right? So like, we are not fans of a corporate property like MLP. We are fans of each other or each other's characters. And two, it's run by artists and creators. Being able to go to a furry con and say, hey, like I'm this, like giant weird coyote. I really like wearing a pink tutu and running around and whacking people with a giant inflatable cactus. I don't know. Maybe that's me. But being able to be that version of me is a gift. Like we should protect it. Amu says they don't really understand the pool toy thing, but, you don't ridicule it. I mean, I think that that's a lot of people's first reaction when they come across something they don't understand is to just immediately go after it and say, ew, gross, like, I don't like that.
Is it the first thing?
Normies. For me, it isn't. For me, it's like, oh, well, tell me more. What is this about? I want to learn. What were you going to say?
I don't know. I feel, I don't know if I'm being naive or anything, but I feel like people that have no filter are like in the minority.
Maybe.
It's people that don't taste how awful their words taste before they spit them out.
I mean, I do see what you're saying, but I also want to point out that, like a lot of people have very black and white views when it comes to certain things. And I think the presence of sexuality in general, that presence, is what kind of sets that off for a lot of folks. They're like, oh no. No. That can't, like, as soon as that's present, like they kind of put on the horse blinders, so to speak,
right.
And just kind of like, they're like, oh no, I know what it is. I mean, like for the longest time, being gay was thought of as just a sex thing. And because of that, it was invalidated as a relationship type. It was invalidated as anything but sex. And that isn't obviously true. I mean, we should vibe check. We should say, this is a space for everyone. Learn, explore, try to understand. Like if something is really challenging you to understand, research it, look more into it. Try and challenge your preconceived notions and your perspective on it to the point where you see, like past maybe your own bias, if you can.
I mean, you don't need to understand everything.
Exactly. Arcade guy, dang, I can't remember when I added and started watching you, but these talks are good. I gotta swing by more often. Well, thank you, Arcade Guy. I always love talking about this stuff. Obviously, I'm not the most talented gamer or anything like that, but it's just, like talking about this stuff really requires, like a little bit of like a prompt. Sometimes I just have to, like step in and just be like, oh, hey, this is actually a really good point for conversation. And like, let's actually talk. Otto Otsky says it doesn't help either that we still have a side of society that teaches nudity and sexuality of any kind is taboo and wrong. I find that belief damaging to humanity. I do too. In a lot of ways, I think that people shouldn't be ashamed of their bodies. I think that people should just kind of embrace who they are and like understand that this is just how it is. We were all born. We came from sex.
Naked.
We're born naked. We're born into this world. Everything added on to us outside of that, stacked onto us by, like people who may or may not have an agenda, for example, like religion. Those things can kind of add up and compound the issues. Some pony fan says, Ash is quite nerdy, and that is why I follow. Hey, am I a nerd? I am a nerd. I'm such a nerd. I love being nerdy. Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I wear it as a badge of honor. The 18 plus time. Let's actually talk about that. So some furry cons, as you may or may not know, they have kind of like a quote unquote after dark time, an after hours period that starts usually around like 9 or 10 p.m. And at that point, the convention floor becomes 18 plus only. And for some conventions, they'll have like a night market or, like a specific area where people might be walking around in kink clothing. And
if any kids are captured like walking around at those hours, they apprehended and sold to the circus.
What? Conceptually, that's a really funny idea, Freckles, and I kind of love that. They age gate those spaces, by the way, just in case people are curious. So, like, it's like walking into the adult dealer's den. Like, you can't just walk around, like, in kink clothing. You have, like, an area where you kind of walk in and you show an ID and they make sure it's, like, everybody's okay. So they kind of, like, create the space, at least from my experiences with the night market. And, like you walk in, you see a bunch of people in latex, you see a bunch of people wearing like leather harnesses, and that's it. There's nothing, like nothing more or less than what you'd really see at maybe a Pride event, your average gay bar, I guess. It is really cool. the first time you experience it. It can also be very overwhelming, and I think that's important to keep in mind too. Arcade Guy says, have you seen too much? Yes, I have definitely seen too much. It is definitely something that I've experienced in my time, and you don't forget it. That's why I have so many weird stories. Black Void Dragon says, I've experienced 18 plus time myself. One of the 2 I volunteered at has just started having some more AD times. A separate / blocked off adults only dealers area. Some of the stuff that ends up in those areas, it always kind of amuses me too, because it's just like, well, that doesn't actually belong in here, but okay. But then, you know, like obviously like the bad dragon booth belongs in there. I'm old enough as a furry to remember when the bad dragon booth was not sequestered at all. So like this was just straight up out in the open in the dealer's room. I'm actually wrapping out the stream here too, I think. I'm running a little low on energy, and I think I got most of the kinks worked out here and figured out, and some ideas.
Yeah, it was a really nice test.